technology. It's wonderful.
Technology is frustrating.
Hello, guitars.
John South, can you hear us?
I can, yes. I don't know who it was, but I heard somebody talk.
It was Barry and Carol, and I just held the space bar down for a few seconds.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I heard you.
Whose picture is behind you?
I did not know that trick, Barry, about holding down the space bar to unmute yourself. I never knew that before.
Some sort of a message came through that says, if you want to temporarily unmute, just hold the space bar down.
That is a new thing for me. That's fantastic. I love learning new things like that.
That's why computers are so good for your mind, especially when they don't work.
I'm not sure about that.
The trouble with that, Barry, is you have to remember that you have to do that.
Well, there is that. You have to remember to unmute one way or the other, whether you click unmute or you press the space bar. But I'm happy to know about the space bar. That is new information to me.
John, your audio is fine today.
Yeah.
What'd you say? What?
Yours is good too, Diane.
Thank you.
I have a better internet connection right now.
Okay.
So I believe all our panelists are on, and then our guests are still joining. So we'll start in a few minutes.
I don't think John South heard me when I was asking him whose portrait is behind his head.
That's an old family heirloom. My parents-in-law were from New Hampshire, and we didn't get the pictures of the antecedent that was once governor and senator in New Hampshire. We got this picture, which was one of their friends. And we have no idea who it is, but we called him the Seasick Admiral. If you look up close, you'll see why we call him the Seasick Admiral.
Who got the paintings of the VIP folks?
The Dartmouth Howe Library, they went to my brother-in-law, Martha's half-brother, who gave it to the library in order to get the tax credit. We tried to buy it after that, but it was no deal.
Yeah.
That's interesting that the Dartmouth Library is also called the Howe. I mean, one of the people is Howe because the University of Vermont used to be Bailey Howe, but then they realized that Bailey was one of those people who was into eugenetics, so they summarily yanked his name off.
Howe was a common name. The big library at Dartmouth is called Baker Library. Howe was actually, if I said library, I was mistaken. It's the museum. It's connected to the center, the student center and so forth. But there was also a Howe Library that was a community library.
Hey, Doreen, is there a lamp
That's what I was just gonna ask, because I could hardly even see my face there at all.
Yeah, the shadow.
Yeah.
I think you're in a different room than yesterday.
No, I'm in the same room.
Oh. Was there a light above you that you switched on last time? I thought I remember.
It's a very dim light, but I'll switch
Okay,
it.
it worked. I remember it worked a bit.
I need a new bulb for it. Maintenance.
Yeah.
Doreen, are you on the
Yeah,
laptop
that's much
or
better.
on the desktop?
I'm on a desktop.
Okay, so you can't turn your screen to face the window.
I can, and actually when I do is what I was doing before. And
The other way though, so that the light's on your face. Yeah, perfect.
is that any better?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's better because
Yeah.
the backlight was dimming the view of your face.
Everyone here at Kendall has becoming experts in lighting and making shadows and well, it is 2 o'clock and I see a lot of folks are signed on, so I want to welcome all of our resident panelists and all of our guests who tune in today. My name is Jessica Bueller. I'm the Marketing Director at Kendall at Lexington. And you have tuned in to a panel of 8 residents who are going to share their perspective on getting the inside scoop of what's been going on here at Kendall. So I'm going to let my colleague Kevin take over. He'll be your host for today, and he'll be introducing our panelists and asking questions. We'll leave plenty of time at the end for questions. Thank you so much. Here, Kevin, you take over.
All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Kendall Lexington Resident Speaker Panel Series via Zoom. I'm Kevin Kavanaugh, host of today's session called What's New? Get the Inside Scoop number 2. See, we did an Inside Scoop session earlier in the year, so this is Inside Scoop number 2. It's a resident perspective on living in a retirement community during a new normal. Since precautions against COVID-19 currently limit our ability to invite prospective residents on campus for a complete tour and to meet independent living residents, the purpose of today's session is to have a panel of current Kendall residents answer some of the most common questions that people have while trying to decide whether Kendall at Lexington is right for them. As Jessica mentioned, we'll leave some time at the end of today's session for live questions from the folks who've zoomed in to watch and listen. And you can also pose questions during today's session by typing them into the chat function near the bottom of your screen. So you just type in your question and then we'll get to it when we can. So as Jessica mentioned, we have 8 Kendall residents on today's speaker panel. I'll introduce each one just before posing our first question. So let's start with Diane Herrick. Diane is currently president of the Kendall Residents Association. She's originally from Minneapolis and has lived in Chile and in the United Kingdom before settling in Lexington, Virginia about 40 years ago. Diane moved to Kendall in 2013, but her involvement goes back to the 1990s when she served as project coordinator of Lexington Retirement Community, the group that created what would become Kendall at Lexington. Diane, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Glad to be here.
So,
And so the question is,
what have you been doing in the last couple of months during this pandemic to stay active and connected to the Kendall community?
well, because I am the president of the Residents Association, what I've been doing is different than I thought I would be doing at the beginning of the year when we first started out the year. And as it is the case for all of us, I think we've had to be doing a lot of punting during this time. Today is kind of an example of some of the things. This morning, I went at 9 o'clock with my coffee up to meet with Jan Bigelow, our director, and Judy Kurtz, our director of dining, and a resident who's the head of the dining committee. And we just changed the plans that we had been talking about for Thanksgiving and eating together because of the incidence of COVID going up. So then decisions need to be made and taking place in administration. I just had a call with a resident who was telling about more of a personal thing that concerned her, but it's very good to listen and to hear what it is. And after this call, I will be sitting in on the Kendall at Lexington board meeting. I'd like to say that while I've been president, I've been really impressed with the board of directors that are here, that we all look out for each other and are part of the community. And another thing that I would like to mention is that yesterday we had our Residents Association meeting with some people in Kendall Hall, but some others, many others on Zoom. And what we do, because we don't tip individually here, we do have 2 times a year when we raise money for the Staff Appreciation Fund, and we have raised well over $90,000 in this half-year period to give to our wonderful staff, because in our community, the staff and the residents have really worked together to help keep all of us safe in a variety of ways. And all of the residents, I'm sure, would affirm that we're so grateful for the wonderful staff here and that we know each other and have this sense of community and looking out for each other, which we do with the residents and so on. I think that what we've had to do is adapt so much of what we do to be safe, but also to have a little bit more social interaction. And I'm sure some of the others will talk more about that. So I'm going to pass it on, Kevin, so that others can talk.
All right, Diane, thank you. We'll come back to you for question number 2 a little later. Our next panelist, John South, has also lived in a few other places before arriving here at Kendall in 2012. John was born in Panama and has lived in Rio de Janeiro, Mexico City, Madrid, and Paris, among other places. John speaks Spanish, Portuguese, French, and of course, English. Good afternoon, John.
Hello, Kevin. So the question is the same question. So how am I keeping myself busy?
Exactly.
And, there's plenty of things I've been able to do. I participate in a number of resident standing committees, and those activities, while reduced, have continued. So we do have meetings, often by Zoom, planning activities. The 2 main ones that I've been involved in this year are the Fitness Committee, Wellness and Fitness Committee, and the Newsletter Committee. And I actually am the co-editor of that. So every other month, I get to put together all the contributions that many residents make to that. That's a thing that keeps me busy and entertained. And then one other major thing that I've been doing is I got involved with, I'm a computer geek, sort of. And so everybody thinks here I'm a genius, but you know, I used to say I was the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, but Diane corrected me. She said, more like, you're in 2nd grade and the rest of us are still in kindergarten when it comes to information technology. But anyway, I got tapped to see if we could find some kind of communication tool using more current technology. And so we did, and I spent a lot of time setting up and installing and maintaining a portal that we call, it's a portal only available to residents, and it's called CATIE, which is an acronym, and I never remember exactly, but Communication and Access to Information Everywhere. And so we have lots of information on that, and it's kept me fairly busy. A couple of other things that I would want to mention, I do get involved outside of the campus here. Once in a while, I get to sneak away and ride a golf cart by myself and fit in 9 or 18 holes of golf. And then we have currently, just about ending, a project that was put on by the Virginia Military Institute, where a professor and a number of cadets work with the outside community, and I was one of the people in that, writing a memoir or writing something that we can pass on to our family. And so we just had a session on that, the closing session on that this morning, but that's kept me busy, and it's also been a stimulus to have me work on something other than newsletters and computers and that sort of thing. So that's my story.
All right. Thank you, John. Next up is Paul Cormier, who moved to Kendall at Lexington 2 years ago in November of 2018. Paul is a retired lawyer who specialized in aviation tort law while working with the U.S. Air Force Judge Advocate General's Department in Washington, D.C. After retiring in 2003, Paul and his partner Lauren lived in Allegheny County before moving to Kendall. Paul, thank you for joining our panel. And the same question to you, Paul, which is, what have you been doing the last couple of months to stay active and connected to the Kendall community?
Well, I think the most important thing I'm trying to do is maintain a regular schedule, a regular daily schedule. I try to get up basically at the same time each morning, don't want to sleep until noon, and go to bed at a regular time. And that's very important. I also joined the fitness class. So every 3 days a week, I get up at 6:15 to go to exercise in our fitness center. And I do that 3 times a week now. The rest of the time, of course, then I got involved in committee work. You know, once you get involved in one committee, there's always another committee that wants you to get involved. And then there's a third committee. And so right now, I think I'm involved in about 5 different committees. That keeps me very busy. So as a result, I became I don't want to say qualified, but I'm pretty well conversant in how to handle Zoom meetings how to operate the audiovisual equipment in our auditorium, because one thing I do is try to schedule a weekly program for our residents, either lectures or concerts that we can show on our movie screen. And so that keeps me very busy as well. Also was involved in the memoir project that John just talked about. So that enabled me to start thinking about writing a memoir of some past event in my life as well. I read more. I have a lot of books to read, and there's a lot of books in our library. You can never run out of books to read. I watch a lot of movies and YouTube. So that's basically keeps me busy all day long.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Paul mentioned our library. I think last I heard is over 7,000 books in that amazing library that's kind of the centerpiece right off the lobby here in the Anderson Center. All right, next up is Doreen Fulzen-Logan, who moved to Kendall almost 3 years ago in January of 2018. Doreen has a degree in political science and was a staff aide to Congressman Charles Goodell of Jamestown, New York, before meeting her husband Daniel and raising their 2 daughters. Before COVID, Doreen was quite the world traveler. She's been on at least 20 Rhodes Scholar programs in the United States and abroad, and at least 12 Grand Circle tours abroad. Doreen, thank you for joining our panel, and same question to you. So what have you been doing during this pandemic to stay active and connected to the rest of the Kendall community?
Thank you, Kevin. Really, it has not been difficult to stay connected. I have lots of meetings with committees. We have conversation pods set up around the campus, both outside and inside. It's like a table with maybe 4 chairs around it where we can have small gatherings. And we have one set up outside our cluster cottages. And it seems like at least once a week, we all get together and just have a little talk. And then also outside on our new terrace, which is really very nice. We can have gatherings there. And then inside. And inside, sometimes I'll just call someone up I haven't seen in a while and say, would you meet me at such and such a place? Other times I have been known just to kind of sit in the table in Anderson and wait for someone to go by and say, come join me. The other things that I like to do, I love to go for walks. And it seems like every time I go, I meet someone. So that's another way of kind of staying connected. And I also go to the fitness center. So that kind of keeps me busy every day.
All right, Doreen, thank you very much. Our next panelists, Barry and Carol Guitar, moved to Kendall from Vermont just 1 year ago in November of 2019. Before 43 years in Vermont, they lived in a suburb of Sydney, Australia. Barry grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, and Old Lyme, Connecticut. Carol grew up in Washington, D.C. Barry taught speech-language pathology at the University of Vermont for 42 years and is the author of a book about stuttering. Carol worked as a librarian and was also involved in grant management at the University of Vermont and Planned Parenthood. Barry and Carol, thank you for joining our panel, and I pose the same question to both of you. What have you been doing to stay active and connected to the Kendall community during the pandemic? Have we lost them?
Tell them to unmute. They're muted.
Oh, Barry and Carol, yeah, if you can unmute.
Are we unmuted?
Now you are.
Okay.
Great.
Now we
thank you.
hear you.
Thank you for the opportunity to have us talk about what we've been up to.
Yeah.
I'll talk a little, and then Carol will talk a little, and that's our dog talking in the background. I don't know if you can hear him, but in any case, just sort of apart from the interaction with Kendall, in the mornings particularly, I spend time, I'm working on 2 books. One is my textbook on stuttering. I'm a person who stutters, and so it's been satisfying to be writing different editions of that book, and I'm also working on a biography of the man who really helped me a lot with my stuttering. In terms of interaction with Kendall, I like a lot of us, I'm on a couple of committees, and that's really satisfying because you can do things that sort of join the community, help the community, and at the same time meet a lot of people. And so the committees are sometimes Zoom, but sometimes small groups where we're all wearing our masks and staying appropriately distanced. Like a number of people have mentioned, I stay pretty active with fitness things. Kendall is absolutely wonderful in terms of the opportunities they provide. And so I'm in a yoga class, and Carol and I go to the fitness center a couple times a week and work ourselves silly. And then we also go to the pool once a week. And so just having those opportunities, which I might mention are not even as great as they used to be before COVID, having those activities really keep us in shape. Another thing I think that connects us is I either run or walk the dog around campus a lot every morning. And so in that way, I'm able to run into a lot of people. They're outside walking their dog or just getting their own exercise. And so we stay socially distanced, but we have, lots of chats about their dog and our dog and various things like that. So anyway, I'll turn it over to Carol and I'll let our dog in.
I too am on a couple of committees, but one of the things that I was asked to do that was especially fun was Diane Herrick, as president of the Residents Association, has been making a point of celebrating the fact that this is Kendall at Lexington's 20th anniversary. And she wanted to have the founding members interviewed and highlighted. And so she asked me to have a chat with Nancy Epley, who was one of the people to first move in to Kendall, Lexington. And so I met with Nancy, had a lovely interview with her, and then wrote that up for the Connections newsletter that John South mentioned. I'm also on the library committee, and we buy books when members of the Kendall community have passed away. And so I've been asked to read and to review a book for one of our recently departed members. And as Barry said, we are active at the fitness center. We get to use the pool once a week, and we do a lot of walking around outside and seeing our neighbors on their porches and, stopping to chat. We'll be on the sidewalk, they'll be on their porch. We're appropriately apart.
Right. Thank you very much, Carol and Barry. We'll come back around to you in a little bit with question number 2. Next up on our panel is Shay Peters. Shay and her husband, Phil, moved to Kendall 10 years ago in December of 2010. Phil retired as chair of the BMI physics department. Unfortunately, Phil passed away last year. Shay has a degree in radiological technology and worked for Carillion Orthopedics for 46 years. She is an enthusiastic supporter of BMI theater and BMI athletics, and has been active in the Mental Health Association, Rockbridge Area Hospice, and the Virginia State Orthopedic Association. So Shay, thank you for joining our panel. It sounds like you have always been busy, but tell us what you've been doing here the last couple of months to stay active and connected with the Kendall community.
Okay, Kevin. First, I'd start my day early, like Paul, around 6, and I take the dog and the cat for a walk after I've had breakfast. And usually I run into some people along the way, which is nice. So we get to interact with our animals or even people that are just out walking. And then I also do the fitness center, which I just love. Those gals are just terrific. I do a strength and stretch class twice a week. I used to do 3 times, but now I'm down to 2. And then I'm also involved in committees, which I'm on Paul's committee, the Culture and Entertainment, and that has been good because we now are doing, like he said, these afternoon potpourris on Wednesday, which there have been a whole variety, musical, just a whole variety of things at 4 o'clock on Wednesday. And then I also go to the movies. I show the movie. We have a nice schedule of people that can operate the equipment and show movies, have movies twice a week. And I'm one of the projectionists, and I enjoy doing that. And I also, my cat Eddie has an article that goes into the connections. Of course, I have to help him, but so I hope that anybody that has a cat will let me know, and they can be featured in one of the connection stories. So that's how I've been staying busy.
Thank you, Shay. We've had a couple of pets mentioned so far today, and I think almost everybody who lives here has at least one dog or one cat. There's it's a very, very pet-friendly campus. Well, last but not least on our resident panel this afternoon is actually our newest resident, Dorothy Schoenman. Dorothy moved to Kendall just 2 weeks ago on November 6th from Richmond, Virginia. Dorothy was born in Hamburg, Germany, and raised in Antwerp, Belgium. Her family immigrated to the US in 1948 and later became citizens. Dorothy graduated from high school in Scarsdale, New York, and went to Radcliffe College in Cambridge. Work life followed at Lord & Taylor in New York City and then Washington, D.C., then marriage and 3 kids. And upon retiring from sales and management at age 64, she became a Peace Corps health education volunteer in West Africa. Dorothy, welcome home to Kendall at Lexington. Thank you for agreeing to join this resident speaker panel today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So because you are so new to the community, I'm changing the questions just a little bit for you. Dorothy, you joined our priority wait list in 2019, intending to move here in 2021, but the type of apartment you wanted came open in 2020. It was offered to you and you took it. So why did you agree to move here a year earlier than you really planned on?
Well, you're assuming a lot when you assume that I planned any kind of date. I picked 2021 because it was far enough into the future that I didn't have to worry about it. I didn't have to do anything about it. It was just kind of sitting there. And when you called me and said it was available, it was a bit of a shock. I didn't have any particular agenda in mind. I think the reason I picked 2021 is that it came for me in a birth year that divided by 5, and I'll let you guess which one. I was very surprised. I wasn't ready, but I came to look at the apartment and it was lovely. I really, really liked it. It was exactly what I wanted. And I thought, well, why not now? And in many respects, I think the fact that it was in the COVID period made it an easier decision. It gave me a real sense of how isolating aging in place can be. You know, you have friends you don't see much anymore because they're also aging. Perhaps your grandchildren, like mine, are getting to be teenagers. They are not exactly around. Somebody is ringing my doorbell, and I'm going, if you'll excuse me just a second, I will just go see.
Okay. So
Kevin, why don't we can come back to her because the second question is sort of similar.
Yeah, we'll get back to Dorothy. So we're going to go back around to the beginning of our panel for question number 2. starting with Diane Herrick. Diane, please tell us why you chose to live at Kendall at Lexington and how you think living in a community like ours has served you during this pandemic.
Tell her to unmute.
Do you want to go back to Dorothy before I answer? Or do you want me to answer?
I think you should.
All right.
Please.
I had joined the wait list long ago when we first decided to move here. My husband did have dementia, and I said, not now, not now. But then my husband died unexpectedly, and I did not like living at the house by myself. I came over to Kendall to say, move my name up on the priority list. And they said, well, what do you want? And I told them the kind of apartment that I had decided I wanted. And like Dorothy, it was just the one I wanted. So rather quickly, I decided within weeks of my husband's death that I would move. And I came, and it's been a wonderful decision as far as I'm concerned, because the community here has meant so much to me. As time has gone on, people are supportive, they're stimulating, the life is stimulating, the talks that we have and the activities that we do, and everyone has talked about the committees that they're on and how they're active in the life of the community. And I think that that's what's meant so much to me. And especially during COVID, I've been grateful because the meals come right to our doors, that we don't have to think about such things. We live on a beautiful campus where we can walk outside. It's very agreeable to do that. So in all, it's wonderful. And my kids are so happy that I am here during all of this, because I keep telling them how we're all really practicing together being safe, because it takes a community effort. So I'm very grateful.
All right, thank you, Diane. And I will ditto what you said about safety. I as an employee of Kendall at Lexington, I tell my family and friends all the time that I don't think there is a safer place to be than Kendall at Lexington, with all of the hand washing and sanitizing and mask wearing and social distancing that we do. And I feel very, very safe coming here every day. All right, let's go back to Paul. Paul, if you would tell us why you chose to live at Kendall at Lexington, and how do you think that living in a community like this has served you during this horrible pandemic?
What happened to John? Did he waive his appearance here?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. John was next. I skipped right over John.
Good memory, Paul.
John, are you ready?
It's the story of my life. So, yes, I'm ready. I'm going to ditto a little bit of what both Diane and Dorothy earlier said. My wife and I had always looked at the life care community as a model that we wanted, largely because her mother lived in such a place, and it was a blessing not only to her, but also to us. And if we could afford it, we wanted to do it for our kids. And we ended up being on the wait list for quite a while, but then Martha became sick and we moved here within 60 days after her diagnosis with a horrible disease. Now that and unfortunately she passed away about a year after that. But it's been a great place to be here for us for a variety of reasons. A lot of it has to do with the basis on which we chose to live here. We came here not only because it's a beautiful part of the world, but because it's a community full of interesting people with lots of life experiences different from mine, but who are unpretentious, friendly, and easy to get along with. I sometimes think of what I would be. I lived in Denver, or near Denver, Colorado, and had I stayed there, and we stayed there, I would be in my house. I might have to go out to buy groceries once in a while, but other than that, I would drive into my garage, close the door, and I wouldn't see anybody for days. That's not the case here. So this has been a real plus in that regard. I think that's probably enough.
Thank you, John. Now let's go back to Paul Cormier.
Thank you. Well, I think the Lexington is such a beautiful little town, about 7,000 people. A lot of history is here. Beautiful mountains, scenery being in the Shenandoah Valley. it's the ideal location to live, whether you live in Kendall or just in the county itself. But I became acquainted with Kendall through a mutual friend who lives here when we met in Russia on a trip. And then I came here to Kendall. She invited me over, and so I learned about Kendall. And of course, the thing I like about it is it's not a high-rise complex. I mean, we have 3 stories of apartments, but it's the architecture. It's very suburban, very rustic type of environment here. Beautiful setting here, and that attracted me to that. And of course, being in the town of Lexington, where you got 3 colleges, there's a lot of young people in town that you can associate with to stay young. There's a lot of cultural activities coming from these 3 colleges, and we at Kendall can experience that and either go to their concerts or lectures or bring them here on campus, which we also do. So those things are very important. And of course, coming to a continuing care community, the big thing is there's no maintenance, there's no housekeeping. They feed you here, you don't have to cook. And so those are things that attracted me. My partner had dementia. We lived together. I took care of him for 2 years in our home, and then he moved here to Kendall at the nursing home. And so I knew that was the time that I wanted to come here as well. He has subsequently died, of course, but now I'm with a nice, beautiful group of people who share the same things that I want to share. And so that kept me here. And I'm glad I'm here.
Thank you, Paul. Doreen, how about you? Why did you choose to live at Kendall, Lexington, and how do you think living in a community like this has served you during this pandemic?
Well, I've been looking at different retirement communities, and then I met someone on the Rhodes Scholar trip who lived here. She raved about Kendall, and I thought, well, before I make the final decision, I think I better go look. And all it took really was coming over the hill into Kendall and seeing the community laid out there and looking at the farm and pastures off to the right. I thought, oh my gosh, this is it. And then at that time, marketing could have let you have meals with different residents so you got to know them. And everyone was very welcoming. I actually came here, I think it was 5 or 6 times before I moved in. I met new people each time. I think that I really feel that I am much better off here than I would have been if I'd still been in my house. Because like John was saying there too, that I would have just probably not have talked to that many people. I would have been in my house to talk to other people, see other people. I would have to make phone calls, get in my car, go off to see them, where right now, everyone is right here. I'm very happy with my decision.
Thank you, Doreen. All right, back to Barry and Carol. Why did you folks choose to live at Kendall, Lexington, and how do you think that living here has served you during the pandemic?
We had friends whose parents were at Kendall in Hanover, New Hampshire, and they raved about it, thought it was a wonderful spot for their parents. But we were anxious to get out of the snow of Vermont and New Hampshire, and we're looking further south for a continuing care retirement community. And my brother was in a dermatology practice with Paul Krasinski, who's no longer with us, but Paul and his partner Lee had a beautiful cottage at Kendall, and so we came and tried it out a couple of times and fell in love with it the moment we saw it. For me, I think walking into the Anderson building and seeing all of those books was just very important. And I feel incredibly safe here. I think the staff has done an excellent job of keeping us safe. It's so nice to have that little guard booth as you drive in, to know that temperatures are being taken by everyone who comes, whether they're coming to work or dropping off food in the kitchen or the construction that's going on outside. I just feel very safe.
And just to add a little bit, as many people have said, we came here for several visits before we moved in, and we're really impressed with how warm and friendly people were. And in the first couple of weeks here, they were so warm and friendly, I thought they were putting something in their food to make them like that. But I've just been reading an article called Old Dog Secrets, and it's talking about dogs aging. But this New York Times article says, humans are said to grow more easygoing, stable, and agreeable as they age. And so, you know, that's something that is so wonderful about Kendall, and we recognize it early on, the sort of openness and the friendliness and everybody being interested in everybody else. And the weather, of course, is amazing. We actually complain about the sun because we're not used to it. And so we have to put on 3 pairs of sunglasses when we go to the grocery store. We're blinded, but it's just so different from Vermont in that respect. And just to add one more thing about the safety, I mean, as Kevin said, we tell all our friends, like, we're probably in one of the world's safest places. Just I don't know how to describe it, but the care with which the Kendall administration gives to making sure we're safe in terms of, you know, like all the staff are checked out with COVID tests all the time. If either, you know, a staff member or in a rare occasion, a resident tests positive, they're isolated and watched over. And of course, there's a huge, it's usually help to have a very active nursing staff here. And so if you know, I mean, one time I got something in my eye, and so I ran to the nursing staff and they fixed that. And so needless to say, they're wonderful to consult with about COVID. And so, you know, like Kevin, we tell everybody that we're in one of the world's safest places. So it's a tribute to Kendall. And I think it helps that, you know, there are Kendalls all over the United States, and each Kendall talks to the, you know, all the Kendalls, and they come up with mutually thought up ideas as to how to stay safe, and that really helps. So yeah, we're great.
All right, Barry and Carol, thank you very much. All right, Shay Peters, we're back to you. Tell us why you chose to live at Kendall at Lexington, and how do you think living in a community like this has served you during this pandemic?
All right. Well, Phil and I came to Lexington from Chapel Hill, North Carolina in 1967. So we have been here since then and did not want to leave this area. So in 97, we we were actually futures before Kendall was built. We signed up, even though my husband said he wasn't sure he wanted to move yet. But anyway, so we moved. We just didn't want to leave Lexington. We didn't want to leave our doctors and our church and just the things that we were involved with here. So it was an easy decision when Kendall was built. And then a dear friend of mine moved in. She was one of the early ones. And so we visited Kendall a lot. Even though we were futures, we visited. That was before phase 2. And then when phase 2 happened, we said, well, let's start really looking into this. So we got a cottage with a basement and a garage, which my husband thought was a prerequisite for coming. But we love it here, and I think that I love it here now. Phil's gone, but I just feel like everybody has said, Kendall's staff keeps us safe, and we can still visit with our friends in a safe manner, even though we can't go to the dining room. I do miss that, but it's nice having our meals delivered. We can be in our pajamas if we want and have our meal delivered. But anyway, it's just a wonderful place to be, and I am thankful that we made that decision.
All right, thank you, Shay. And now back to Dorothy, our newest resident. Dorothy, before the doorbell rang, you were telling us why you decided to come here earlier than originally planned, but we can from there go right into the next question, which is why you chose Kendall at Lexington in the first place. And I know you've only been here for 2 weeks, but how do you think that the community has served you so far during the pandemic, and how do you anticipate it will serve you moving forward?
Let's answer the second question first. I am absolutely happy as can be. Love my apartment, love the food, but I think most of all, I love being able to walk out my back door and walk over to the gym. It's a great way to meet people. So far, I've done a water aerobics class, I've done the free swim, I've had a strength and stretch class, and something else that I can't think of at the moment, but the variety is pretty amazing, and it's a great facility with wonderful people running it. The reason I chose Kendall, honestly, was because it wasn't like any of the other retirement communities that I'd ever seen. A friend of mine moved to the Kendall community in Maryland. I didn't want to be in Maryland. I wanted to be closer to Richmond. This wasn't quite close enough for my family, but I think after they visited with me here last year, they were convinced that it was a place I would enjoy living, and it was worth the drive for them to come and visit me. So that's the plan now. And here I am.
And we're happy you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. And thanks to all of our resident speaker panelists for giving of your time to help the folks who are considering a move to Kendall get the inside scoop on living here. So we're ready now to open it up to questions. If any of the folks who have tuned in or zoomed in have any questions, this would be a great time to
I have a question here, Kevin. Some folks just saying they hope to be able to visit in person soon, which we are open for some tours, some limited tours, mostly to open residences and outdoor, but we are open for tours. And then Judy asked, talk a little bit about what's going on with construction. Diane, why don't you take just a couple minutes to let folks know where we're at, where the campus is at as far as our ongoing construction projects.
You're muted,
I didn't even say the swear word, I thought. Construction has gone on longer than we thought that it would go on, but at this point, the people living on Sunrise Ridge are just into doing final punch list things. What isn't quite complete are some of the details in both the nursing part, the Borden Center, and over at Webster Assisted Living. One of the reasons that we began phase 3 was that we felt that it was really important for us to have our nursing section be following best practices, and indeed with the neighborhood concept that has proven to be very good. And it was time after 20 years to upgrade also in the Webster Center. We are now seeing the outside getting completed, and most of the outdoor landscaping parts are there. There still certainly needs to be some more work inside of Sunrise Ridge, the newest cottages. But we are seeing the end of the tunnel. We are, they say that they will be done getting off the campus by December 31st. Given the track record, I'm not holding my breath.
Right.
But we do think that it is close to being near the end.
Yeah. Despite some of the joking there, it has been amazing how great everyone, we've been all staff and residents, I think, very, very patient. There's only so you can only be so patient. So we're all looking forward to it being a little bit more normal here. Maybe we can come back to you as well, Diane, but if Paul and Doreen want to talk a little bit on how some of the decisions have been made during COVID on what are the restrictions. You know, we talked about some of these safety protocols. How do those decisions come to be? Paul, do you want to start talking a little bit about that committee, and Doreen and Diane add in?
Yes, I'm part of a committee. There's 4 of us independent residents that meet with about 6 of the core leadership team at Kendall, and we meet every 2 weeks. And we basically, we started out saying, you know, once we had the complete shutdown in the beginning of March, and as things change over time, we would meet and say, what can we do to open up a little bit? We call it stepping out, one step at a time. And so we would have discussions. Can we open up the fitness center? What about the dining room? What about allowing people on campus? All these things we would talk about, and the administration would obviously give their opinion based on the state, the governor's prescriptions about what we can or cannot do, and the CDC of what can be done on at the nursing home and the assisted living facility. And so we go back and forth each time, and right now we're on step 4, which basically we have limited open. We have the fitness center opened by appointment. The dining room has not been opened yet. We hope to have our first meal there Thanksgiving Day. That'll be the first time it's ever been used since we rebuilt the whole new dining room. We still did maintain our I don't want to call it a guard shack, but we do have one of our maintenance people screening all incoming people, and that's always been, when should we have it 24 hours a day? And we did in the beginning for several months, and we just recently decided that we would only have it for the daytime. So these are decisions we make each time we meet together. What more can we do to try to maintain the community environment so people are not completely isolated? How do we get them together? That's why we created these conversation pods that Doreen talked about. And so that's basically what our function is at this committee.
Anything to add, Doreen or Diane?
Well, one thing is we do not always agree on decisions that we make, because we each hear from different residents, and some are very anxious to open up the campus right away. Others don't want to do anything. So we have to really come to an agreement. And we might make some decision one time, and it can be changed at another time, like the guard station. It didn't really seem necessary to have someone out there 24 hours a day, because it took our maintenance men away from doing maintenance on the cottages. I think the committee has really worked well with both residents and administrative. And I feel that the residents really do have a say in what goes on, which is always good. That's basically it.
Diane, anything else?
I would agree, and I think that both Paul and Doreen have given a good view of that. As we were speaking, I saw a message pop up in the corner that regrettably Thanksgiving will not be in the dining room. So we won't be able to do it because there is such an increase in cases around the country, especially for the purpose of the staff. The staff didn't feel comfortable having more people in the dining room. And I think that we as residents appreciate what our staff does for us and have to appreciate their comfort level as well. So that is a decision that's been made. So these are the kinds of things where we work together with administration. I'd like to say that I have very much appreciated that administration has wanted to involve and really listens to what it is that residents say. We have this Stepping Up committee really has been working together, I think, quite well.
And to follow up on that, there was a question because it was mentioned that some staff were tested positive for COVID. And on our website in the news section, I do post regular COVID updates, especially after we have testing rounds here. So far on our campus, what we know of is in the beginning, a few months ago, we did campus-wide testing where many independent living residents, all staff, and all of our health center residents were tested. That was over 400 folks tested. And at that time, one test of an independent living resident did indicate a positive. That person then went and got another test and it was negative and had no symptoms, but we did get a positive result there. Then for about a couple of months now, the Borden Center has been doing regular testing per CMS guidance. If the community, if the county where the Borden Center resides, which is Rockbridge County, is at an elevated COVID level, you test more. If it's on right now, which is a lower level, there's not as much testing. So right now they're on a once a month testing, and the Kendall tests all staff that access the Borden Center. So your regular nurses and CNAs, they're there all the time, and any maintenance or housekeepers that need to go into the center. So through that, there's been a total of 4 positive indications of a positive test. And when that happens, those people are immediately quarantined. We have a policy here that if you're out because of COVID, you're still getting paid. And then anyone who had been in direct contact with those folks are quarantined or tested or appropriate measures taken. Thankfully, we have not had any indications of a positive COVID test for any residents in the health centers. But if you'd like to stay up to date on that, check our website regularly and you can see different postings on our testing and all of that. But unfortunately, like the rest of the country, we are seeing rising levels in the area outside of our campus, so we need to be cautious.
Jessica, adding to that, we like the stimulation from the colleges. The colleges have young students. Young students are enthusiastic and full of life, and they like to party. So when they came back from summer vacation, oh, well, the COVID positive cases went up in the area, because during the summer we were really very low around the area. So that's part of what you with.
Yeah, and someone just asked a question about priority for vaccine. At this point, the federal government is talking about distribution of the vaccine for nursing centers, so nursing home centers, which the Borden Center is. There isn't a lot of details shared on that, but they have expressed priority for that and help with administering it as well. Any other questions of our residents on what it's like here? I see some folks on the call that may want to be joining our community sooner than later. Anything you want to know now?
I'd like to say something as a resident. I joined, we were sort of like, somebody else mentioned they were on a waiting list for a long time and didn't come. And that was my case with my wife and I. And we finally came after turning down several. And it turns out you never know what to expect. We weren't ready, but the illness that struck her was ready. And so we were lucky that we were on the waiting list and something was available very shortly. But plan for the unplanned is my lesson.
Glad you mentioned the wait list, John, because that's something I try to mention when we have these sessions. I think most of the folks who have Zoomed in today are already on the priority wait list. But if you are somebody who's considering someday moving to Kendall at Lexington and you have not yet joined our priority wait list, it's a really smart thing to do that. It only costs $1,250. $1,000 of that applies towards your entry fee or is refundable if you change your mind and don't move here. but it gets you on that list so that when the type of apartment or cottage that you're interested in comes available, you know, we let you know, as happened with Dorothy on our panel today. There was a very specific kind of apartment that she wanted, and there's only 3 of them on our campus of 150 independent living residences. There's only 3 of the kind that Dorothy wanted. And because she was on the priority wait list, she got that phone call when that one became available, and here she is today. So if you want more information on the priority wait list, you can call Jessica or Katie Hall or myself here at Kendall Marketing. We'll be happy to answer your questions. And if you decide to get signed up, we can help you with that too.
And I'll just end with, we typically talk about a next presentation. We don't have one lined up quite yet. We'll probably skip the resident panel for December, but are trying to think about something fun to do. So stay tuned for another invitation from us, and we'll post a lot on Facebook and our website, so you can stay connected with us there too. Thank you all.
And that concludes today's resident speaker panel, What's New? Inside Scoop number 2. Thanks to all of you for attending and participating. Stay safe. Have a happy Thanksgiving, and we hope to see you all again someday soon here at Kendall at Lexington.
Thanks for giving us
Bye.
the, we really appreciated it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.